Hi, welcome to One on the Page. I am Scott. This is the October wrap up. I finished 21 books this month, so let's go over them from worst to first. The worst book of the month is The Orphan Keeper by Cameron Wright. The Orphan Keeper is a book that I read for my family's book club. It is the story of a boy who is kidnapped in India and is essentially sold to parents in America who raise him. He is not an English speaker at the time, so his parents do not know that he was kidnapped until he starts to learn some English words and says that he still has a mother in India, that he is not an orphan. This is written by a white writer, a man from Salt Lake City, not that it matters, but a Mormon. The Church of Latter-day Saints plays a large part of this man's life because this is a fictional retelling of an actual event, but it is not talked about a lot in the book. You can, I'm going to put you down, Wash. You can determine for yourself why it is not. I don't think that this book is written particularly well. It's very amateurish writing. I don't like the form that he uses to write it. There's like a period of 10 years that's just cut over, and we're told stuff but never shown it. Apparently Taj, who used to be Chelmuthu, I believe, is quite a popular person. He is the student body president of a class that has 900 seniors. But he's completely unlikable in this book. He's antagonistic. He's mean. He's just snaps at people. We're told people like him and love him, and we're not shown any reason why. And the book kind of puts across that him going to America is a good thing, because how would he become the person that he is if that didn't happen? Although his own brother, who is in India, is moderately successful there. And also, it doesn't really touch upon, except at the beginning, after the kidnapping first happened, it doesn't really touch upon the effect on his mother. He does not find her again for I think 16 years. So, there are better books, I assume, about this type of situation. I don't think that there can be worse books. This is absolutely the worst book that I have read this month. One of the worst books I've read this year. I don't know where it ranks, but if I do my top 20 worst books, it's probably in the top 5 worst. Book number 2, or the second worst book, in both of these I gave a 1-star rating to. This one's just a touch better than The Orphan Keeper. It is A Daughter is a Daughter by Agatha Christie. This is, as with all the most recent Agatha Christie books I read, was a Mary Westmacott book. Mary Westmacott, of course, being the pseudonym that she wrote non-mysteries under. A lot of them are involving relationships, family. A lot of the characters in here and in the other Mary Westmacott books are a lot like the characters in her Agatha Christie mysteries, except in those books we have an interesting mystery or a not quite as interesting spy drama or adventure to fall back on. Here we have to deal with the characters, and the characters are not fun. The characters are not interesting. The characters are, as I said, basically repeats of the types of characters that we get in Agatha Christie books, just without any excitement. This is the very worst of the Mary Westmacott novels. It's about a mother and daughter who are dependent on each other, but also not dependent and kind of don't like each other. It's utter garbage. If I didn't have to read this for my 5-year battle Agatha Christie, I would not have read it. It is the worst Mary Westmacott. I will say I don't think it's the worst Agatha Christie book, but it's in the running. You can watch my 5-year battle Agatha Christie to see what I think might be the worst. I haven't mentioned it yet as of the date that I'm recording this. Book number 19, the third worst book, is The Rose and the Yew Tree by Agatha Christie, writing as Mary Westmacott. A little bit less family in here, more a woman being in love with a man who is, quite honestly, unlovable, and she comes out the worst to wear for it. It's also set... It's not a political novel, but there's a lot of politics in it. The man is running for office in England. It's completely boring. And book number 18 is 2 Parts Sugar, 1 Part Murder by Valerie Burns. It is a cozy mystery that, as I will often say, I picked up on Kindle Unlimited because I get Kindle Unlimited. It's essentially a free book. And it was actually pretty good until the ending. A woman inherits a bakery and a home from her aunt who she has not met. And the woman seems a little bit shallow. She's a social media influencer type. And she moves to this place because she has to stay there a year and run the business to inherit it. And, murder happens. I don't have a lot of problems with it. There's also a 250-pound dog named Baby. Baby was awesome. But the thing is that this feels like it was 2 books, or it feels like it was 1 book that was broken up into 2 parts, because there's at least another book, and it feels like instead of doing what J.R.R. Tolkien did with The Lord of the Rings and cutting them up into their own sections, just like this one was split in 2 and put in 2 books, but with no consideration for the reader. It's like, oh, okay, we found out who did this, but there's this, and this, and we just, all right, that's over, but a lot of the mystery is still there. And there's nothing in the book that says, oh yeah, this is a continuation going on. It's just like, boom, done. So I'm not going to read the second book because I don't put up with that shit. I have so many books to read. If you're not going to give me a reason to read, I'm not going to read. Book number 18 is the collected short stories of Guy de Maupassant, Volume 9. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think, can I name you a story in Volume 9? No. There are really no memorable stories in this. If you gave me the name, I could describe the story, but none of these stories will say, oh, I remember in Volume 9 I read this. And I read this recently. Like, I finished it like maybe a week ago, less than 10 days for sure. But it's 13 volumes of these books, and just a lot of them have the same step by step. This is a Guy de Maupassant short story. This is what we're going to see in each short story. And there aren't any stories in this one that are like, oh, but this one is a bit different than the other stories. Which in another volume that I will talk about, we do have. But it is not the one in book number 16, which is the Collection Short Stories of Guy de Maupassant, Volume 8. Not much different than the previous volume. What I said about that, I say about this. So we move on to All Wrapped Up in You by T.B. Markinson and Adrian J. Smith, which is book number 15. It is a sapphic romance. It's a grumpy sunshine romance, but I just never really bought into the grumpy part, that this was a person who just needed that sunshine in their life. Just kind of left me cold. It is set in the bookshop, which is one of the reasons I picked it up, because that'll get me into something pretty quickly. But just characters really being dumb. And I will say this, I said it in the vlog in which I talked about it. If you're writing a book about modern times, be smart about modern technology. Have a good reason why people don't use modern technology, and the reasons that happened in here weren't good. Book number 14, and I still have one more after this, is The Collected Short Stories of Guy de Maupassant, Volume 7. There's one good story in here. There are a bunch of decent stories in here, but the one good story is The Terror, which is just an excellent short story, which is why this is a little bit above the other ones. I had mentioned before when I was talking about him that if I took like stories to make up 2 volumes of his, instead of 13 volumes, just 2, would just be one of the most amazing short story collections ever. But this is 13 volumes, and there's a lot of roughness in here. This one's just a little bit better. It has some stinkers too, but The Terror really brings it up. Book number 13 is A Song in Her Heart by T.B. Markinson, the same author who co-authored All Wrapped Up in You, which I almost forgot the title of. It's another sapphic romance. It's a country singer and a diner waitress. It's pretty good as far as the romance part of it. I usually have a lot of problem with power dynamics in books, and this one has power dynamics, but it handles it very well. I just think that a lot of the dramatic family stuff just was a little too much. Okay, book number 12 is Not Just Gal Pals by Elizabeth Lowley, which I had to look up to remember what the book was about. It is about 2 people who used to be high school classmates think the other one didn't like each other because they were actually both attracted to each other, and then they get together. One is a doctor, one is a social media influencer. Apparently that's a trend in the books I'm reading this month. It was good, but like I said, I had to look it up because I just completely blanked on it. Now that I looked it up and it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I remember it. It's like, it was fine. It was fine. Book number 11 is Bunny by Mona Awad. I give this a 5 for writing and a 1 for story. This one's probably going to be widely all over the place for different people. I think it's pretentious. I think it acknowledges that it's pretentious. I think it uses the unreliable narrator as a crutch. And I think it's sometimes too cute for its own good, and honestly, by the end of the novel, I just didn't care. And I don't want to ruin it I don't want to ruin it all for anybody, because there are people who are going to watch us who, if they read it, are going to love it, or who have read it and do love it. And that's perfectly fine. It didn't do anything for me, and it just pissed me off. The writing is excellent, though. So I have no advice for you on this. Read it or don't read it. You'll love it or won't love it. There's really nothing else I can say. Book number 10 is Broken Beyond Repair by Emily Banting. Bunny, a far superior written book, but I had more fun with Broken Beyond Repair. Honestly, Broken Beyond Repair was very good. Another sapphic romance, grumpy, sunshine, a little bit of age difference, not overly significant. An actress needs a caretaker because she has broken her leg, and she gets somebody who's a bit of a free spirit who drives around in a camper all the time. Doesn't really have any ties down anywhere. The thing that drags it down a little bit for me is, unlike 2 parts sugar, 1 part murder, where it's just like, okay, boom, ending. This one's like, hey, we're doing an ending. We're working on an ending. Yep, here's an ending. It was like the Return of the King of endings, but it's a 2-person sapphic romance. It's not the Lord of the Rings. You don't need to drag the ending out that much. But, it was a fun read until the end. Nothing wrong with the ending, just dragged. Book number 9 is The Collected Short Stories of Guy de Maupassant, Volume 9. This is the last of his books for the month. No particular standout stories, but generally almost all the stories were good. I don't know how many people want to watch the video, because I don't know how many fans there are of Guy de Maupassant, who I knew nothing of like a year ago. But after I finish with all 13 volumes, I may just do a collection of short stories that read these stories. This is the perfect collection for him. But volume 9 is a pretty decent one. Book number 8 is The Burden by Agatha Christie, writing as Mary Westmacott. It is the best Mary Westmacott book. It borrows a little bit, I won't say borrows, it has a lot of the same story points as far as a familiar relationship between sisters as Five Little Pigs, the Hercule Poirot mystery, but that's just really a starting place. Unlike other Mary Westmacott books, the part where people are children is the best part of the book for me. It drags. It doesn't drag. It kind of dies at the end because we're introduced to a character we hadn't known before in another time jump thing. And it's just like, I feel like the parts that aren't in here were probably some of the more interesting parts. But as a Mary Westmacott book, this is excellent. As an Agatha Christie book, it's better than average. I say the bell curve. It's a little bit to the good on the bell curve. Book number 7, and one of the books I did finish for my October TBR. I finished 21 books, and I only finished, I think, 3 of 6 on my TBR, which is why I don't do TBRs. But is The Witches by Roald Dahl. It was a fun read. It's just, I've never read it before. It was not what I was expecting. It left me with questions that I felt I needed answers. I know that it's mainly a children's book, even though Dahl even writes children's book in more of a adult view. I had questions like about his parents who died, and not really spoilers. That happens near the beginning of the novel, and it's like, oh yeah, they died. Oh well, whatever. And it's like, so yeah, it was good. And what is this? 3 times I put you down. It was good, but it was not great, which was kind of what I was expecting. So my expectations ruined that for me. I still have plenty of Roald Dahl books because I got them for my birthday. So I will read other ones, some of the which I have read, and I know I will probably enjoy them more than not. Book number 6 is Meeting Millie by Claire Ashton. It's set in England. Another sapphic romance. Two college roommates, one of who is a lesbian, the other one who is straight. They have something happen between them, not like that, and they don't talk to each other for like 10 years. And then they meet each other again later, in their relationship blossoms. And I apologize if you're hearing noise. That's one of the cats using the litter box. So yeah, this was one of my most fun reads as far as the romances go. The only thing that I will say that was bad about this was one of the characters' mother. It's one of those things where a parent is a shitty person, and at the end of the book, the parent and the child are closer somehow, not because of anything the parent does, but because the child just accepts their shitty parent. Or even worse, which doesn't happen in here, but even worse, they apologize to their parent even though the parent was the one who did all the wrong. It's coming up on Christmas time, and you see that a lot in Christmas movies too. Book number 5, which is a book that probably will resonate for even fewer people than the Kingdom of Passat books, but it is Mox by John Moxley. It is a memoir. I won't call it an autobiography because it's all over the place, but it's a memoir by the wrestler John Moxley, talking about his career in his life and fellow wrestlers and favorite snack foods and favorite movies, and just there's not a through line in this book. It is really all over the place. It's almost like you just like, well, what am I going to write about today? Okay. And then tomorrow I'll write about something completely different. If you are a fan of wrestling and if you are a fan of John Moxley, and particularly John Moxley promos, this will definitely work for you. I do suggest, if for any reason you're going to read it, do it on audiobook. He reads it. He is not a professional audiobook narrator, so you do hear some issues that you might not hear with other narrators. But it is a John Moxley promo that just happens to be like 9 hours long and is entertaining as hell. Probably one of the most fun reads I read this month. Book number 4 is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. It is about two sisters who live in a house. The older sister was put on trial for murdering her parents and her brother and her aunt. She was acquitted, but basically, the two sisters and their uncle who survived are pariahs. And the older sister, Constance, is basically agoraphobic, and the younger one, Maricat, only goes out like once or twice a week to get the get groceries. Only goes out about once or twice a week to get groceries. A cousin comes to the house, the father's other brother, not the uncle that's already there, and he sets things in motion. And it's very gothic book. It's narrated by the younger sister Mary Cat, and it is what you would expect from a Shirley Jackson book if you've read The Haunting of Hill House or her short stories. It's very atmospheric, and it's just excellent book that I just wish there was a little bit more. Book number 3 is Imogene, obviously, or it could be Imogen. I don't know. I think it's Imogene, obviously, by Becky Albertalli. She is the author who wrote the book that Love, Simon is based on. Uh, I believe it's called Simon versus the Homo sapiens. It's about Imogene, who is straight, but she has a gay sister and best friend, and she's a member of like the LGBTQ club on at her school. She is a senior in high school. She's 18. She's going to be going to college next semester. She goes to college to visit her friend and basically spend a weekend there, and she finds herself attracted to another woman. This, you obviously see that I read a lot of LGBTQ stuff because I have a lot of family members who are LGBTQ. Most of the people in my family are women, so this is what I'm comfortable with. Imogene also has ally issues. She has problems with like, am I doing right as an ally? Which I kind of have too, except I hate the word ally because I think it's just one of those words been kind of screwed over. It's like if people call me an ally, almost it's like, oh. But I mean, it's what I am. It's just the way the word has been used now is what has damaged it for me. This is a really lovely book. The only problem I have is she's a senior in high school, so when it got to some scenes where it's like, oh, some stuff may be happening, I was like, but there's not really, there's no sex in the book. So if that's something that bothers you, you know that. And if that's something you're looking forward to, then this isn't the book that you're going to find it in. But I still think it's a very good book on the discussion of what it means to be an ally, what it means to be LGBTQ, what it means to gatekeep. There is a gatekeeping character in there, and she's unpleasant to me. Book number 2, and we're going to do a little tonal change from Imogene, obviously, to Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. This is a long book, has very irritating characters who annoy me. It's philosophical and dark, and it's fascinating. I think at the very least everybody needs to read it. I don't know if everybody will enjoy it. I will admit Raskolnikov, the main character, annoyed me so much that I often felt like I needed to take a break from him. And I also needed to take a break from the heaviness of the article, which is why you get so many fluff books that I read, because when I read something heavy, I often read something light to counterbalance. And like I said, this was a long book and other books were easy to read, so I finished like 5 fluff books to Crime and Punishment. Book number 1. It is a book I have read before, but I appreciate it more now than I did before. It is Frozen Assets by P.G. Wodehouse. It contains a lot of what makes P.G. Wodehouse great. The comedy, just the capers. The one thing that I think raises it a little bit above some other Wodehouse books for me is the friendship. There is a male friendship in here that is actually a friendship. It's not one of those ones where people will go to Bertie Wooster for help and insult him and basically say, hey, you're a jackass, I don't like you, but I want to use your valet to solve my problems. It seems like these two male characters really like each other, and there is some gentle teasing in it, but other than that, it's just, oh yeah, these guys are friends. A lot of books from Woodhouse, you don't get that. So that is the 21 books that I have finished for October. That brings me up to, I believe, 154 books for the year. I told my daughter I'm not going to hit 200 books like I did last year, because last year I was finishing up the Agatha Christie's, there's Wash again, and reading a lot of Woodhouses, which are generally shorter books. I'm keeping stats on this, and my average book length is like, I think, 289 pages or so, whereas last year was probably like 230, 240, and I finished, I think, 209 books back then. I didn't think I was going to get this high. I may not, but you know, I will be closer to 200 than I was expecting. So that is it for this month. I will do another one of these in November, and I will have another P.G. Woodhouse book. I will have a lot of books you may not expect me to have if I do the video that I'm expecting to do. I'm doing a genre video, which I did with romance like 4 or 5 months ago or something, but a genre that I have not a lot of experience. I have actually finished one of the 5 books, so I will probably put that video out and have some strange books to talk about next month. So until then, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I will talk to you later.